Glaciers like this one, the Svinefellsjökull, are so big and move so slowly that it's hard to imagine that we can have any effect on them. They, along with the ice caps they're sometimes connected to, make up a part of our planet called the cryosphere, and it's getting smaller by the day.
Since we started pumping greenhouse gases into our atmosphere in the late 1800s and the world started becoming more industrialized, these systems were becoming more unstable. And we're unsure of the outcomes, but with modern technology we can monitor the changes to our cryosphere and adapt to our changing world. I'm Hugh James, and I'm here in Iceland to look at how technology can save our planet. While we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, what we are sure of is that anthropogenic, human-caused global warming is changing everything. And I used to tell people that we had to be prepared for when climate change arrives, but the truth is, it's already here and it's wreaking havoc across the globe. But even in the face of all this, it can be really easy to lose sight of the effects of the climate crisis, especially when you live somewhere that doesn't feel like it's being affected. In a world where we travel across the globe for holidays, rely on other countries for food and technology and trade with absolutely everyone, a wildfire, a flood or a hurricane on the other side of the planet can have massive implications for each and every one of us.
So what about glaciers? It's easy to visualize the impacts on glaciers, but the effects are much more important. 2 billion people rely on the runoff of glaciers and ice caps. They're like huge water batteries that hold on to water when it falls as snow, then let it run off into the rivers all year round. And total global glacier mass loss is predicted to be 26 to 41% by the end of the century.
And the way it's looking right now, with what governments have pledged, we're set to lose more than 200,000 glaciers. And even if we somehow do miraculously loads better, we're still set to lose 104,000 of the smaller ones. 50,000 will be gone in just the next 30 years. Fortunately, modern technology has revolutionized the way we monitor changes on our planet. Satellites use sensors that collect a range of data, including temperature, precipitation, wind speed, sea level rise, and more.
The data they collect is transmitted back to Earth and analysed by scientists to get a better understanding of changes in the climate and our cryosphere over time. Satellites these days are relatively cheap, which makes them a great tool for mapping huge areas for a relatively low cost.
The process involves using high-resolution cameras which can be mounted to satellites, and these create detailed maps which can then be used to track changes to the glacier's size and shape over time. This gives us really great information on how fast the glaciers are retreating, and we need the regularity and efficiency of satellite data to monitor the ice on our planet. But we're all now used to having this kind of satellite imagery now just on our phones. It's how we find our way around. Map makers like FatMap, though, use this kind of data to create really detailed maps, show us things like slope angles, avalanche warnings, elevation data, and more. Hey Charlie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Hugh.
So tell us, what is FatMap?
So FatMap is the #1 app for mountain sports, for discovering, planning, tracking, and sharing adventures in the outdoors.
And where is it that you get your data from?
So we aggregate lots of different data sources to build the map. We get the best elevation data from sources around the world, high resolution satellite imagery, local topo maps and reference data from national mapping agencies, and then open data projects like OpenStreetMap. And then we also use community activity data and contributions from our users to improve the information we provide.
And how do you take that data and turn it into something that we can use just on our phones?
The FatMap map is basically our proprietary technology, and we bring all the data together and process it into a single map. And then that can be used dynamically to help serve the needs of outdoor discovery and exploration. So we bring it all together to provide the ability to plan, the ability to track what you're doing, get inspired, and share it with your friends. The slightly more technical answer is that it's made up of a tightly coupled set of data processing pipelines and then mapping services, and then finally a 3D rendering engine.
Charlie, that's amazing. Thanks so much for your time.
Good luck on that glacier.
That there in the distance, that's our objective, the Svinesfellsjökull. Using FatMap, we can get a good look at our route for our journey up the Svinesfellsjökull. These glaciers and the weather change quicker than we might think, so we always have to be ready to adapt. But it does look like the best way up is on the east side, past these glacial lagoons, avoiding the pressure ridges to the west. We'll head high onto the glacier to create that model, but first let's take a look at what photogrammetry really is. Photogrammetry is a really powerful tool that allows you to create detailed, accurate and interactive models from 2D photos or even video. And it's got lots of applications. You can map lots of terrain, like on a glacier. You can survey land, like on a farm, or even create smaller 3D models that are really detailed and accurate, like the face of this mini iceberg. This app is called Polycam, and it allows anyone to create 3D models and do photogrammetry using just your smartphone. Creating 3D models like this, you've got to take your time, stay slow, and make sure you get all the different parts of the object in. So on this software, where it's purple, it hasn't taken any data yet, but where it's taken the data, we've got these triangles which are at different angles. The triangles show the curvature of the ice block and all the indentations caused by rain. So when you think you've finished capturing all the data that you need, you just hit stop. So it saves that data when you hit process. So what it's doing now is stitching all those photos together alongside the location and like directional data for each one to make a 3D model. It only took 3 minutes to process, which is crazy because there's so much data there, but now we have a complete 3D model of this entire chunk of ice. It's amazing the amount of detail this goes into because it captures everything. Even that little bowl shape with the ash sitting on the bottom, it's all captured in here. So that's the plan. make a 3D model just like this, but one that's a lot bigger. We just wandered over to the very snout of the glacier. You can see where the glacier comes down the hill. It all piles up here. It's a little lake here where the outputs to, but all the glacier terminates just here. So we're gonna set up a camp for the night and then get an early start in the morning. I say early start, sun doesn't rise till 10 a.m, so not too early. And then we're gonna make our way up onto the glacier, get as high as we can to set off the drones from there. Another good thing about drone technology is not just being able to map these kind of areas, but find your way through it. So we've been trying to pick our way through little crevasses and pressure ridges, and to aid with that, we're going to use the drone to just try and find our way. So as far now onto the glacier as we're going to get, the tent is all set up and it's time to start mapping. So the software we're going to use today is called Drone Deploy. Makes it really straightforward to get the photos that we need to make our maps. And drone technology is kind of revolutionizing the way that we gather information about the world, making it really simple to make detailed and accurate maps. So we've made our mission. We actually did that in our accommodation before we left. It takes in the entire bottom half of this glacier. That's the bit we're really interested in. The parameters are all set, so when I hit go, it'll actually go to a predetermined height and then do a path back and forth across the glacier, looking down and taking those photos. We'll stitch them together at the end to create something called an orthomosaic. Orthomosaic's like a huge puzzle of loads of small aerial images captured by a drone. Those then are all pieced together to create a seamless map of an area. You can see and hear the drone now as it makes its passes back and forth the glacier. We want to go left to right and not up and down, so it keeps a similar height above the glacier for all its shots. Science is just starting to embrace drones and aerial mapping to monitor locations like this. There are scientists that look for sharks and whales and even get really close to volcanoes. And then there are scientists who use them to look for water buildup inside glaciers to find out when they're going to burst. Hey Pascal, how are you?
Hey you, thank you, I'm good.
So tell us a little bit about your research.
Yeah, so during my PhD we used radars and drones mainly to better understand the subglacial hydrology of alpine glaciers, so how they drain the water. And for that, for example, we wanted to understand what the shape of channels that flow underneath the ice is, like how wide they are, and actually they're quite wide and meandering. And thereby we also discovered, for example, that some glaciers, when they melt very quickly, they have like places where they break down at the surface. There's like a huge hole forming in the ice. And so we used different tools for that, but amongst them radar and drones.
And what is it that you found?
Yeah, so one of the main outcomes is actually the shape of these channels, that we're able to detect them with ground penetrating radar, so that's carrying like a radar antenna at the surface of the ice. And if we measure precisely enough and many measurements of that, we're able to derive the geometry of these channels that flow underneath the ice, and we cannot go in because there's a lot of water flowing in them usually. And the other thing is that we discovered is the size of these channels, so they can be really wide, like 10 to 20 meters wide under kind of medium-sized glacier, not even the biggest glacier. And they are meandering, so they have big bends, very strong bends, actually like a real river. And they also transport a lot of sediment, so that's some outcome. And then another thing is these collapse features, so these, what I said, like where the glacier surface breaks down, these have been happening much more frequently in the last few years in the Alps, and we realized they happen due to erosion internally in the ice, so due to a channel actually that is eroding the ice.
And I assume that the drones have just been an essential tool for you.
Yeah, so we use drones, mainly actually normal drones that you would also use just for fun, and they have quite a high quality camera on them, and so we took a lot of pictures and we used photogrammetry to reconstruct the surface topography at a really high resolution, also together with differential GPS measurements. And the resolution is about just a few centimeters precision, so we can map every detail at the glacier surface. And thanks to that, we can, for example, detect changes that happen. So, for example, the size and the evolution of such a breakdown, a collapse feature. And also, sometimes there happen deformations at the surface that are not due to melt, but they are due to a lowering of the glacier surface and a deformation due to the underlying channel. And we were able to detect these over the time scales of a few days. So a lot of drone data. Another thing that we collected is, of course, just the pure orthophoto, so just the visual representation of the glacier surface, and from that we can derive a lot of information too.
Thanks, mate. See you soon.
Thank you.
Now we've collected all those photos, we've uploaded them to Drone Deploy, and it's created us an orthomosaic that we can explore as a 2D map or 3D model. And it's much better than just having satellite imagery because it's much better resolution and we can create it ourselves fairly cheaply. Doing this multiple times a year could give us real insight into how these glaciers are changing. Not only how they're receding, but also how they're deflating. How does the volcanic ash change the melting on the surface? And where are the moulins forming, where the water dives deep into the glacier and cause those subsurface lakes that Pascal was talking about? So, monitoring the cryosphere is critical for understanding the impacts of climate change right now and for predicting future changes. The data and information collected about the ice on our planet is essential for developing effective strategies to combat the impacts of climate change and ensure a sustainable future for the entire Earth and us who live on it.